Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello everybody, welcome to one more Tuesday. This week, we have with us Shoaib Naik. Hey Shoaib, welcome back.
Hey Vasco, thank you for having me again.
Absolutely. So, Shoaib, we are going to talk about teams and how sometimes they create their own problems. But before we dive into that, do share with us, what's one book that really influenced you in your career as a Scrum Master?
Okay, I think this is the easiest question I have been asked. So I would say, first, I love trekking and mountaineering. I have learned a lot from my treks and expedition, and this has influenced me not only professionally but also personally. So I have read a lot of books and seen a lot of documentaries on this subject. So you must have guessed by now, my favorite book also would be related to mountaineering. So it's the last book I read about mountaineering. It's Beyond Possible, One Soldier, 14 Peaks by Nirmal Pujara. So it tells the story of Nirmal Pujara, and this story includes his epic achievement, like leading a team that scaled K2 in winter and being the first man ever to summit the 14 8,000 meter mountain peaks in less than 7 months. Just for our podcast listeners, just to put things into context as to how extremely difficult and dangerous is to achieve something like this, is let me quickly tell you about K2. So K2 is also known as Savage Mountain, because of the 4 people reaching the summit, 1 dies. That's the stats. And less than 400 people have reached the summit of K2. More people than this have been to space. So stats are even worse if I start speaking about the other 14 peaks. So this gives you an idea of how difficult this is.
Yeah, absolutely. And learning to live with adversity, and I'm betting also a lot of improvisation and adaptation to the things that happen in the mountain is a big part of that. Can you give us like one lesson that you got from the book that you think applies really well to the Scrum Master job?
I think the best one I liked was when Nirmal Pujara was looking around for sponsorship to climb these 14 peaks, because this mountaineering is a very expensive sport. So everybody was saying, hey, this is a great idea, but this can't happen. This is impossible. So nobody was ready to sponsor him. So finally, when he got some sponsorship, then just look at his mindset. Since everybody, all of his people he went for asking for sponsorship, they said it's impossible. He named this project of climbing these 14 peaks as Project Possible. So we as Scrum Masters also go into situations which seem impossible at times and which are difficult to solve. So having a mindset like Nirmal had about his project, if we have it for our teams, for the organizations we are coaching, it will really help us out.
Absolutely. That's a great point, and also an inspiring story. Project Possible. I guess we should always look at our project as Project Possible. Absolutely. Right. Shoaib, now we turn our attention to the teams, those that we want and hope to help, of course, reach their peaks. So tell us a story of a team and, give us a little bit about the context, but tell us how that small behavior or pattern emerged that ultimately led to problems.
Okay, so this story, Vasco, comes from one of the best teams I have worked with as a Scrum Master. So it was not like we were the best from the start, but over a period of time we improved and changed. And this story also comes from the time when I was just starting out as a Scrum Master, and this team was also pretty new. And the project for the team was to build a B2B web shop for the client. And this is around velocity, the team's constant, I would say, attachment to velocity. So let me give you a context around this. Is I think we had finished 2 to 3 sprints together, but had been consistently failing at delivering a sprint goal. And the team was thinking that since we don't have a clear idea of a velocity, that must be the reason of a failure. So that is why we are overcommitting and failing. And they were not looking at the other things. So during the sprint planning, I will give you a scenario. During the sprint planning, it was like if somehow we calculated the velocity was 50, historical velocity is 50 of the team would be like, okay, we take 50. They would take 49, but they won't dare take 51. So this I think this behavior continued for a couple of sprints. And there was this one sprint where we failed completely. We didn't even finish one user story. After that, it was like you can say it was we had hit rock bottom as a team, as individuals. So after this things changed. But till then, whenever I went into these calls where we needed to talk about sprint backlog, the calls were so tense. It felt like everybody was like on verge of exploding.
And the team believed, if I understood correctly, that if they were to know the right velocity, everything would be fine, right? Like if they knew their capacity, in other words. Like
yes.
If I knew what I was able to do, then I could just do that. And you're pointing to that something else was missing. What was that? What were they not looking at?
I think it was like later when we find out was the quality of the user stories. They were missing details. We didn't get enough data or the information that for writing user stories from the client on time. So most of the time we started sprints with, let's say, half-baked user stories, and somehow we missed it as a team. I think last time I talked about my failure as a Scrum Master. I also, as a Scrum Master, failed to see this and coach the team on. But later, when we found out this, we started improving the quality of the user stories. All these things just went away. The team stopped looking at velocity, and they just had a better understanding of what they can achieve in a sprint.
So, if you would have to describe it for our listeners, what would be then high quality user story? What would you be looking for? What were the changes that happened in the stories when the team was failing to the stories after when the team was no longer failing? What were the biggest differences and improvements on the user story?
I think first of all, it was clearly defined acceptance criteria, and they were not changing. Like earlier, the client was changing them from time to time, but after that, we said, okay, if it goes in the sprint, we are not changing. Like a user story, if a developer is working on, let's not change it in the middle of sprint or towards the end of the sprint. The designs were much clearer as to, I guess we consulted the client better. We were talking with the client much more and getting more feedback and putting all these details, clearer designs for the team, and other technical details in the story much better. Earlier, these were missing. So I guess these are the things that we improved from like when we were failing to when we started to improve.
And one of the things that you said, which is I think very important in order to get there, is this requesting feedback, right? Because it's obviously it's a non-trivial problem to solve to establish good communication with the client. But on the other hand, if we collect feedback, then we learn what are the things that usually fail, what are the information that is usually missing, and then we can focus on that, right? Like we can learn also through that process of feedback how to create better user stories.
Absolutely. And I think it's more writing better user stories is all about communication and collaboration, not only with the team, but also with the stakeholders. So that really helped.
Yeah, collaboration and communication in practice, not just talking about it, but actually getting that feedback cycle working well for us. Excellent. Well, thank you. That was a great story. Thank you for sharing.
Welcome, Oscar. My pleasure.
Tuesday is Team Day here on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast. But tomorrow we talk about something that goes beyond the work we do with the teams. We will talk about how to lead change and what our guests have learned from leading and participating in change programs during their career. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.